What up, guys? The video is here. Thank you guys. I appreciate all the support that you give my little channel. Trying to grow it. I appreciate every subscribe, like, comment, all of that. So today we're going to be going over the Glock 23 Gen 4 chambered in 40 cal versus the SD40, also chambered in 40. Now these, man, after taking a good look at them, they're pretty similar in dimensions. Man, this is as neck to neck and as head to head as it gets. The sizing, everything is like right there. And this is pretty much, I would say, the competitor to each other if you're taking out M&P. Because obviously M&P would be more against the Glock rather than the SD series, since the SD series is a little more budget friendly. However, this one is a little more upgraded, and this is an older version. This is the Gen 4, and these days the Gen 5 is out. Likewise, this is the older SD, and the newer SD is out. So it's still a pretty solid comparison, and most of the reviews that you get will be a direct comparison against the M&P, but you won't really see any against the SD40. So I'm glad that I'm able to offer that right here for you guys. So right off the bat, Glock 23 chambered in 40. This one is not an optics ready model. It does come with some old night sights and safety check. The Glock 23 does hold 13 rounds, okay? 13 rounds. Let me wait for this thing to focus a little bit. You know how the cameras act up sometimes, guys. I'm a little sorry for that. There you go, there you go. So 13 rounds right here on the left. And the SD40, check it out, 14 rounds. 14 rounds. Also empty. So 14 rounds on the right, 13 rounds on the left. So it does hold one more round for capacity, the SD40, compared to the Glock 23. And let's check out the grip size, just to make sure we see what we're getting at. I say about right there is even. So yeah, you see where that one round, maybe a little more. You see how it's tipped a little down to the bottom right there on the right. It's about a round's more of length, which makes sense. Now, I did go ahead and take out my 17 round 40 mag. So right here, this is the way it comes stock. That way it can be a proper stock versus stock video. Now, of course, you know, there's some pretty much upgrades that I can't really just take off for this, such as the Apex trigger and these little mini takedown levers. But regardless, it'll be a proper comparison considering the dimensions are pretty damn near identical. So right off the bat, let's start with this 40 cal. Okay, I know these days everybody says, oh, 40's dying, 40 is obsolete, everything is about 9mm these days. Yeah, well, if you go ahead and take a look at the new release by Springfield, brand new, it's their Kuna series, and that's pretty much the direct competitor to HK's MP5, considering they're both roller delayed, which means pretty much the recoil is delayed and it's a softer shooting piece. However, what a lot of people don't know about the Springfield Kuna is that they do have a variant chambered in 40. They do. It's actually also now being issued to the Brazilian military and police. So it does exist out there, and I know that they're contemplating pretty much releasing that to the American market. But for now, they did go ahead and release the 9mm version, just because in America, everything is about 9mm. Guys, if you go to other countries, yes, you're gonna go ahead and see 9mm, of course. But you're not going to just see 9mm. You're going to see tons of 40 out there. It just is what it is. And that goes for a lot of other countries too. You know, people are still banging 10mm, 357, and 40. That's just what it is. Now 357 may not be the most popular, but there is a niche market out there, and there are people that get them. So when you guys say things are dead, I think what you mean to say is that they're dead to you. I'm not trying to be like that or anything, but 9mm is not the only round out there, guys. But I get the crave over it, capacity, recoil, all of that. So anyways, both chambered in 40. So this is something, you know, for those who want a little more pop to their piece. You know, if they want a little more bang, of course, right, at the cost of recoil, you can't go wrong with either one of these, right? Now, when you go ahead and pull this one back, let's take a look at that barrel. I know Glocks have one of the best barrels for sure, but when it comes to 40, Glocks don't have fully supported chambers for 40. I have no idea why, but they don't. You know, Glocks, if you're taking a look at their 9mm barrels, they're there 100%, right? So what that means for me is that 40 in Glocks, yeah, you can definitely run 40, this and that, but when you reach like the really hot and spicy loads, you know, there are videos out there where the frames have cracked and things like that. Now, anybody that owns an SD, even being an SD, they know that these things run literally anything, right? That can be from the smallest grain, the highest grain, to like the craziest rounds out there, and somehow this thing does not break apart or anything like that. At least that's what's been the case with me. The SD40 just eats anything. She's hungry, right? That's just how it is. Now, magazines. Come on, Glock, man. Plastic exterior, but metal interior. At least they have the metal interior, right? So if there's, you know, any cracks or anything like that, you should still be able to run this thing. But just the fact that, you know, with shock absorption, you know, especially if you're dropping it with rounds in there and it's a little hefty and heavy, you know, it has happened before. I'm a big fan of metal magazines. I don't like plastic on my magazines, of course, excluding like the followers and you know, things like that, right? I'm talking about the body. I do like how it's metal with all of Smith Wesson's variety. You know, that maybe MP, SD, whatever it is, they don't use plastic. But I'm not going to shame Glock for that because, you know, they were one of the first to do it. And pretty much they're the ones that set the whole striker fired like rave. You know, they set the wave here, and they're always going to get my props for that. That being said, you can go ahead and purchase, you know, metal magazines for Glock, you know, with the aftermarket, different companies. I'm just talking about the way it is from the company, right? So from the company, you're going to get a polymer-based mag with at least metal interior. And then over here, you're going to get just a straight metal mag. That's just is what it is. So that's something that I'm going to go ahead and give to the SD right there. Now let's check out the top of the slide, just so we can go ahead and get a, let me go ahead and take this back a bit. There you go. It's like pretty similar, but you can see that the SD is a tad bit longer. There you go. Yeah, so you're looking at, it looks like maybe, I don't know, like a 1/4 inch more, something like that. More or less, yeah, about a 1/4 inch. So it is going to go ahead and be a little bit easier to conceal if you have a Glock 23. Now, even though these are older models, the SD series does have serrations in the back and the front, and they go from the bottom to the top. And you know how I really like that. It's just a lot easier to control it. It's a lot easier to maneuver. Now Glock, I like how they go all the way to the top here in the back, but in the front, I mean, it's okay, it works right. But you know, you're working with just straight slide. You don't really have serrations right there. They did go ahead and fix that with the Gen 5 though. The Gen 5, they do have the serrations in the front as well. But right here for the Gen 4, they lack serrations entirely. Not even in the bottom or anything, they just simply don't exist. So that's something that I want to go ahead and give to the SD right here. Now, the SD series was based off the original Sigma series. It's just like, I guess, the new variant. And the Sigma series was based off the Glock. So in other words, I guess you could say, in relation, this is based off the Glock after some time. You know, it's just tried to make its own little differences, you know, so it still has that Smith Wesson name, but it is based off the Glock. I'm not going to say it's not. And you can actually see right here the similarities, the takedown method, everything looks extremely similar. You know, the size, it was not meant to be a direct competitor. You know, M&P was always right there, you know, because it was just a lot more durable than the SD. But regardless, this is still a solid comparison once again, because the dimensions are just so similar, since Sigma was based off the Glock. So the takedown method is the same. Let's go ahead and check out the triggers. Right? So safety blade right there. Let's go ahead and pull that. You know, it doesn't take much to take off the safety blade. It's just a little piece right there. And once it does pop off, it is pretty crisp. I'll say that. Okay. Rack to back. Let's check out the reset. Not too bad. It's a Glock trigger, but honestly, the Glock trigger stock might be even better than the Apex for the SD series. Now, the Apex for the M&P, that's different, but right here we're talking about the SD. So let's check it out. Okay. So if you notice, when you pull this safety blade back, the trigger also goes back a bit. It's not just the safety blade. So that's something I really don't like. Anyways, once you're here at the wall, pull. Yeah, the Glock trigger is better. I will say that. And the reason I'm going to say it is because of the reset. This has a better reset, and it also pushes it out further. My bad, not further. It pushes it out towards the reset. So you're not really needing to put in any work to, you know, kind of calculate where that reset is. This kind of pushes it out to there. You only need to pull back. Here, you kind of need to be more conscious about, you know, where that line is at. So in terms of trigger, Glock wins. Serrations right here, SD wins. Magazine, SD wins. Concealability, Glock wins. Not much of a difference, but 1/4 of an inch right there at the muzzle tip. And you're also getting a little bit of increased length just because you have an extra round capacity. So 14 plus 1, you're looking at 15 rounds in here. 13 plus 1, you're looking at 14 rounds right here. So, I mean, it makes sense. You know what I mean? It does make sense. Now, the barrels, Glock has always made good barrels, especially now with their new Gen 5 Marksman barrels. And you could see right here, now this thing can eat anything, and it's super like on point, deadly accurate. You know, I can one-handed bullseye with this, and it's an SD, right? But if you take a look at the barrel, you can see that it's not the thickest barrel by any means. Right here, you could see it has a little bit more thickness, but let's take a look at it like that. You can tell this one has a little bit more thickness than this one. This one is just a tad bit thinner, and usually, you know, the thicker the barrel, the easier it is to tame. Now, they both are honestly about the same in terms of shooting. When it comes to recoil, you know, you're not going to feel more pop in one than the other. However, the trigger is different because that can make it feel like it's something more than what it is. For example, originally this has like pretty much a 10-pound hinge trigger, and when you use that, man, you feel like the bang is just so atrocious and out of this world. But it's really not. It's just because the trigger, it's hard to pull. It just makes it much more dramatic. You know, the lighter the trigger, typically it's going to just seem a lot more tame. So now with the Apex trigger, but compared to the stock Glock trigger, they're about the same. You're not going to feel much of a difference or anything like that. Aftermarket, right? I mean, let's be real. Is anything better than Glock when it comes to aftermarket? Probably not, right? I will say though, right out of the box, you do get a pretty good deal right there. But when it comes to aftermarket, man, you just can't beat Glock. You can do pretty much anything in the whole wide world that you want with this. You can upgrade the trigger, put any light, any laser, any barrel, even threaded barrels for the 40. You know, they have different thread points even for the 40. You know, you can go ahead and put a mag well. You could do anything like that. So aftermarket, it's not even a question. Glock wins at 100%. Grip angles, right? Right here we're looking at a 22-degree grip angle, and what that means is that you kind of have to point more with your thumbs rather than just a natural. This would be about a natural aim right there, and then right there is pointing with the thumbs. Now right here, you don't need to point with the thumbs, it's just natural. Yeah, right there. So in terms of the grip angle, I'm gonna go ahead and give it to the SD because it's just more of a similarity to the classic 1911 grip angle. It just feels a lot more natural. But once again, you can go ahead and fix that with the Glock. I know Chiral Defense now offers pretty much things you can add on to the back strap that fix that. But once again, out of the box, I don't like the 22-degree grip angle. I just don't. But to each their own. A lot of people are used to the Glocks, so they're used to pointing it slightly down. And you know, when they hop onto more natural feeling pieces like 1911 grip angles, they have to work on the adjustment, rather than if you're used to using one of these, you don't have to adjust as much when you go to different brands or companies like that, but you do have to adjust when you go to Glock. That's just the way it works. Now, slide release, massive difference. I like big slide releases. You literally can't miss it. It's serrated, it's long. You know, this just drags across your thumb, the whole thumb. And right here, you have a little teeny. I mean, it'll work, right? But the slide release, I would swap that out. But that's just a me thing. A lot of people don't mind it. I just prefer bigger slide releases just because it's easier to handle, at least for me. But it's also serrated too. So not the best, not the worst. Overall, these are pretty similar. You can't go wrong with either. You know, if you're looking for something you can upgrade, easily go to the Glock. You literally can't go wrong with it. If you're trying to do any upgrades, there's a plethora of options with the Glocks. There's nothing in the world that you can't do that you want to do. Nothing. You know, you can even put a 9mm conversion barrel in this and use 2 calibers in one if you wanted to. Actually, if you really wanted to, it might be even 3. I think they even offer like 22 conversion barrels in there, so you can probably run 49 and 22. I might be wrong, maybe 357 SIG. I'm not sure how it works out of the Glocks. I know with M&Ps you can, but in that case it might be even 3 or 4. Right here, I know you can with the M&Ps, but for the SD, if it's a 40, you're stuck with the 40. So you can only use it in 40, but that shouldn't be an issue at all. Regardless, both solid options, both extremely similar in sizing. I don't think you can go wrong with either, but this is going to cost more than this is going to cost. Even the Gen 4s, even though it's an older model, it'll cost more than the SD40, even the new one, the 2.0. So in terms of durability, corrosion resistance, things like that, I think Glock wins. Not to say that this slide finish is bad at all. I've had this for many years already, and the slide finish has held up really well. I'm not even sure if it's an Armor Knight finish. I don't think so, but you know, Smith Wesson, they're always on point with that. But just in terms of, you know, war ready, if I had to go to war between these two, I'm not sure because I'm already so used to this one. But if I wasn't used to this one at all, if I wasn't on point in it, like I hadn't trained with it or anything like that, I would go with this one. But just the way, you know, things stand right now, I'd go with this one. But definitely this one, more battle tested, more ready, definitely can get a higher round count, that's for sure. You know, before any internal parts breakage or anything like that. But yeah, guys, the Glock 23 versus the SD40. Very similar in sizing, once again. Take a look at that. Take a look at that. Just way too similar. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Let me know. Let me know.